grade the team's performances, and obviously the overwhelming story was Shedeur Sanders and an unprecedented slide for the quarterback into the 5th round. I promise we are not going to spend the entire podcast talking about that, but we will begin there. Field, I was with Mel for the first 2 nights. I've not had a chance to talk to you. What was your reaction to the story of this draft?
Yeah, lesson learned for me, Greeny. And let's talk about the quarterback evaluation. More so than any other position, perhaps, in team sports, there is the on-field evaluation, and there is the other bucket, which I'm going to call loosely intangibles, but it encompasses a lot of things. The NFL told us that the on-field front, they don't think Shedeur Sanders is as good as Mel and I do. I had him 16th on my final big board. I believe Mel had him 4th overall. Maybe it was 5th, somewhere in that top 5. The second part of it is perhaps the more important part here, Greeny. The NFL told us that the intangibles and everything that comes along with Shedeur Sanders were simply not good enough, whether it was specific to the pre-draft process or during the entirety of his 4-year college career. It is the perhaps confidence, perhaps in the eyes of NFL teams perceived as arrogance that Shedeur Sanders maybe would bring to the table. Those are things that no one said specifically. But let's make no mistake about it. The NFL is willing to make concessions on players at times if they can play. But when you go to the 5th round as a quarterback, it's telling us that we don't have a belief strongly enough in you as a player, and also that we have concerns about what happens once we draft you and all of the stuff that we have to deal with going forward. I know that it's a difficult subject to broach in some ways, but the stone cold facts are 143 players, including 5 quarterbacks, Greeny, went ahead of Shedeur Sanders. The NFL did not send a subtle message. They sent a very loud and pronounced message to all of us, not on Thursday or Friday, but Saturday afternoon. I considered a lot of things throughout the pre-draft process. One thing that I never considered was the possibility that Shedeur Sanders would go on day 3 of the draft.
So, Mel, now that you've had time to sort of catch your breath and internalize everything that happened, because your reaction during it was visceral and real, and I understood it completely, and I knew that that's how you were going to react. Now that you've had some time to take it all in, what are your final words on the way that whole thing went down?
I think the team that ended up with Shedeur would find a Shedeur that is all into that team. I think Shedeur just wanted, hey, you have faith in me. You have belief in me. Who's going to have that faith, that belief? And in the draft process, until draft day and your pick, you really don't know. So, Cam Ward got that assurance from Tennessee. Early on, you're our guy. Shedeur wanted it. The NFL said didn't give him any of that. Yes. So as far as Shedeur goes, we talk about intangibles. We talk about off-the-field issues. None of that. So what are the intangibles? Confident or cocky? Arrogant or charismatic? Swag, right? You want swag, right? Or arrogance. A quarterback that feels that he's the best, you want. Tom Brady had it. Tom Brady told Robert Kraft that when he met him, hey, you're our 6th-round pick, right? He said, yeah, you're the best decision your organization. I'm the best decision your organization ever made. That's what you want. And maybe that ship, maybe they realize that, hey, these teams all passed on me. The Raiders took Cam Miller out of North Dakota State in the 6th round. Obviously didn't have an interest in Shedeur, right? You think about what teams have done. New Orleans took Tyler Shuck, right? So again, Dylan Gabriel went in the 3rd round. He went in the 5th to the same team. That's happened before. Kirk Cousins the 4th when RG3 was the 2nd pick in the draft, right? Heath Schuler went in the top 5. Gus Frerotte went in the 7th round. Worked out pretty good for Gus Frerotte. Better than Heath Schuler. Cousins better than RG3. Troy Aikman was there, and they still went for Steve Walsh in the supplemental draft Dallas did with Jimmy Johnson. So in terms of Shedeur is going to be coming in, and all the talk about what went on in the pre-draft. You want a guy prepped for an interview or being organic. You want him to be real and be who he is. If you want all of that field, if you want to be all buttoned up and prepped, then go get another quarterback. And they did. They spoke. I agree. They spoke. Okay, but he didn't have to go to the CFL or the UFL like I was thinking during the draft, and maybe he's going to have to go that route to prove he can play maybe at that level before the NFL is going to give him a chance. He's going to get a chance with the Cleveland Browns. So because of that, I give it an A+ grade too. Okay?
Yeah, no surprise there. I just, like the Brady analogy there, like I don't think we're talking about anything that's close to the same category. The way, like Tom Brady's pre-draft process was nothing like Shedeur Sanders' pre-draft process. Again,
it wasn't. Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't, Mel. Come on, you don't really think that, right?
There's different ways to view a pre-draft process. When you run a 5.25 40 and have a 24 vertical, and I looked at my last report that I had because I went back to the old days to the archives. This is what they said. Okay, a non-athlete,
right, Not his
who
choice.
couldn't beat a turtle in a race,
Not his
slow as
choice.
molasses in January with a mediocre arm.
We're not talking.
That was
talking
Tom
about
Brady,
that
who
stuff,
thought he was going to be a
right.
second-round pick, by the way,
Yeah.
ended up going in the 6th round when a Hofstra quarterback went in the 3rd to the team that he loved growing up and wanted to play for, the San Francisco 49ers, passed them over for a Hofstra quarterback, right? And there's Tom Brady at the end of the 6th round, not even taken by his own team in the 6th round. They took another player over him. Like I said, he goes there with a major chip. He didn't think he would be a 6th-round pick. He thought he'd be a 2nd-round pick. Yeah. And the NFL said, no, because the pre-draft process that you just referred to didn't treat him well.
No, but Mel,
it didn't treat him well.
That's apples to, I don't even know what. That's apples to palm trees. It's apples to a motor.
No, you said pre-draft process. That's part of the pre-draft process.
Mel, I remember this. This is just one example of many, right? One of my first mock drafts, this was, I think, January. I had Shedeur Sanders going 6th overall. And of course, this entire process for Shedeur has been streamed, whether it's captured on YouTube, Twitch, you name it. And someone sent me the clip. It went all over the internet because they posted it. And Shedeur, I was doing my analysis on SportsCenter, and Shedeur looked at the screen and basically laughed and said, 6th overall? There's no way I'm going to make it to 6th overall, okay? In his brain, he was the best player in this draft. And as a result, like, he did not, when he went to the Shrine Bowl, by the way, which the NFL instituted a rule this past year, Greeny, that if you're going to accept an invite to one of these all-star games, it has to be for players that are actually going to participate in practice. He showed up, didn't do anything, right? Didn't throw at the combine. As we know, like the pro day was this event that was unlike any pro day that I think any of us have ever witnessed and probably ever will witness. It's just, I think it'd be naive to say that this pre-draft process from Shedeur Sanders was not extraordinarily unique and perhaps unlike any that we will ever see from a quarterback again. I just fundamentally believe that.
What games were played in the last 3 months? Were any games? What games were played over the last 3 months?
The NFL has spoken. 144th overall, right? Like, if this was your debate going into the draft and you said there's no way this is going to fall because I think all this stuff is overstated, I'd buy it. But now it's done. And 144th, right? I mean, like, it was just ahead of, like, kickers and, I mean, to me, it's disingenuous to think that the pre-draft process was not unique for Shedeur and negatively impacted how he was drafted this Saturday afternoon.
I think you're both right. The pre-draft process worked badly for both of the quarterbacks you're talking about. At Field, you're right, for entirely different reasons. The pre-draft process worked against Brady for entirely different reasons than it worked against Shedeur. But at the end of the day, none of that matters. And here was the one point I tried to make on Get Up today. And that is, because we spend so much time, energy, and effort on the draft, preparing for the draft, and God bless you, Mel Kiper, for creating this industry for all the rest of us, we sometimes act like the draft is the end of something. The reality is the draft is the beginning of something. And if you're going to handpick a situation in which Shedeur Sanders could have found himself, considering he fell to the 5th round, I don't think it could have fallen better. So I believe he has an excellent chance, despite how badly the weekend obviously went, to be the starting quarterback in Cleveland and to have every bit the career, Mel, that you forecast for him. And if he does, then the best part of the story when we make a movie about his life someday will be the weekend that he fell all the way to the 5th round.
Yeah, and I do think this. I think the Dome would have been, if you say preferable for me, would have been the Raiders. I know Cleveland had already New Orleans had made their decision to go Tyler Shuck. With Cleveland, when the North and the weather and all that, I thought with the Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, the scenario there of saying Dome really benefited them tremendously. I really felt like the Raiders, after I knew it wasn't going to be New Orleans after taking Tyler Shuck, the Raiders would be a great landing spot with Geno being 35, with Pete Carroll and the Brady influence there. But it just didn't happen. They took a quarterback, Cam Miller, in the 6th round. Didn't take Shedeur Sanders. He ends up in Cleveland. We'll see what happens, how it plays out. You're right about everything you said. It was different. It was totally unique. It was unique. It's happened to players before where some of the pre-draft process from that standpoint, not doing the things the way the interviews should go, because this was interviews. This was personality. This was that, okay? This was what it was about. Talking about it off the field. This kid's a great kid. He's never had any issues. So, but he kind of, I would say, let's say this. He rubbed the NFL the wrong way.
Yes, he did.
Let's leave it at that.
Pronounced. Let's leave it there.
To put a ribbon on it, Mel gave them an A+. Very quickly, Field, we'll make this our first grades, and then we'll move on. We're going to all the other plays. But Field, what grade did you give, and what was your reaction to the Browns draft this week?
I would have gone more B+ than A+. Obviously, I wasn't, I didn't feel the same passion that Mel felt about that Shedeur Sanders pick. It's amazing, though, that the Browns were involved in what I thought would be the most dramatic moment of the weekend, and instead it's just a footnote, right? The Browns made a massive, massive trade when they moved from 2 to 5, landing the Mason Graham, and sort of the foundation of what they got was the Jaguars 2 plus their first next year. So I'm a big fan of betting on the downside of teams that have a long ways to go, Greeny. So I actually thought that while I love Travis Hunter and I still believe that it was a useful trade for Jacksonville, I liked Cleveland's side of that trade better than I did Jacksonville's side of that trade. So we could be talking about this next year, the Browns owning 2 of the top 10 picks in a class that 12 months out looks to be decidedly stronger at quarterback. So I'm okay with the Browns' process in that huge, huge trade, even one that cost them Travis Hunter.
Me too, and that factors into the draft grade.